He was great.
What year was I there, Mark?
2018, live, and we're live. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Mark Anastasia. I'm the Director of Special Programming at the Coolidge Corner Theatre in Brookline, Massachusetts. We were thrilled to be asked to be a part of Sundance Film Festival 2021. We were selected by Sundance to be one of their satellite screens, and we had hoped to be putting on shows for the festival here at the Coolidge, but unfortunately we all know that that couldn't happen for a lot of theaters for one really terrible reason. But we are really excited to be able to take part in the Beyond Film section of the Sundance program this year. And the Coolidge has put together a few different discussions and examples of the types of programming and discussions that we put on here at the theater. If you're interested in Coolidge programming, please do visit us at coolidge.org and check out a virtual film. Every little bit helps. We are a nonprofit cinema. But I'm so excited that you're all here tonight for our Women in Horror panel. This is a panel that we're putting on in conjunction with Women in Horror Month as part of our Coolidge After Midnite film series. For the last 3 years, our Coolidge After Midnite program has participated in Women in Horror Month, and we've had so much fun playing films directed by women, starring wonderful, badass women, and audiences have really enjoyed the types of programming that we've put on in partnership with Women in Horror Month. So we were thrilled when Women in Horror Month wanted to be here with us tonight to present this panel. And it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator this evening, Hannah Forman, who will introduce our panelists. Hannah is the founder of Women in Horror Month and also the founder of the Axe Wound Film Festival. And I'm really thankful that you're here tonight, Hannah, and I'll leave it to you to introduce our guests, and I'll see you later for the audience portion. So I do want to explain that to our audience, that those of you who are watching this live on YouTube, if you have questions at any point during the panel, please use the chat field in YouTube to type your questions up, and I'll do my best to get those to Hannah and our guests later on. But Hannah, thank you very much for moderating tonight.
Thank you very much for having me here, and welcome to our panelists and everyone who's watching for taking a break from the dystopian hellscape that we're all living in to talk about something more uplifting, which is horror films. And speaking of which, we have 3 women who have contributed so much and continue to the horror genre. And I'm going to start by introducing Adrienne Barbeau. Film, television, Broadway star, concert, stage, recording artist. Adrienne Barbeau, film artists know her from The Fog, Escape from New York, Swamp Thing, Back to School, Two Evil Eyes, Creepshow, Covenant, to name a few. And she's also the author of 3 books, a memoir, and the Vampires of Hollywood series. We also have writer and editor Alison Lang with us, whose book, Women with Guts, a collection of essays and interviews with women who work in horror. And it's available via the Rue Morgue magazine library. She's also contributed to Satanic Panic, Pop Culture Paranoia in the 1980s, with a chapter on Geraldo Rivera's Devil Worship episode. And she also presents topics related to horror and gender at multiple festivals and conferences. We also have Gigi Saul Guerrero with us. And Gigi has been praised as one of the top emerging directors in the horror genre and is co-founder of Luchcore Productions. She's directed the action-packed episode for The Purge Season 2 and her award-winning feature debut Culture Shock for Blumhouse Productions Television, which is on Hulu right now. Her series with Warner Brothers and Stage 13, La Quinceañera, won the Audience Award at the 2017 Marbito Film Festival. And just like Adrienne Adrienne Barbeau. Gigi is also a screen and a voice over actress. And you can hear her voice in the Netflix Super Monsters as Vita and Marvel's Superhero Adventures and Supergirl. Sorry, cut out. It is. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. So I thought I would start with Adrienne. And I was reading an interview with you recently, and I was shocked to learn about your feelings of horror, of what you think of horror films. I was like, wow, really? And I don't want to give it away, but I thought I'd ask you, as someone who's a cult icon in so many amazing films, what do you think of horror films?
I don't go to see them. I don't want to see them. I have seen, when I'm not acting or writing or doing anything else, I do video describing for the blind. And one of my series was The Purge. So I suspect that I saw Gigi's episode. I'm describing for the blind what's happening, in between dialogue and everything. But if I had my druthers, I'd never watch another one in my life. It's not something I grew up on. I've never seen Psycho. When John Carpenter first handed me the screenplay for The Fog, it was 1979, the height of the women's movement, Coming Home and China Syndrome and all of these socially significant films. And I read it and I thought, what is this? This is just it's a ghost story or something, Thank God I did it. But yes. I don't like to be scared. I mean, I love action adventure. I love espionage, but I don't like to be scared. And I also, I do see some because of my video describing, we do a lot of Blumhouse films. I also think there's probably been I assume there's been a transition as the years have gone on, and they've become much more slasher, and you don't even know who's getting killed because they get killed within the first 3 minutes of the film and all of that. So I'd rather watch Scandinavian mysteries. That's what I watch.
So interesting.
MHD choice. I'm a big Scandinavian, inspector series.
Well, I'm curious in terms of your books. They're not horror, but they are definitely within a monster Hollywood realm, and so there must be some connection some positive vibes there, maybe. No?
Actually, what happened was I wrote my memoir, and it did fairly well. And I was approached by an Irish author who had read it and who had many, many books published in the UK in our genre, or in this genre, the science fiction genre, the horror genre. And he said to me, I loved your book, but it's not the one you should have written. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you should write a horror novel for your fan base at all the conventions and everything. And I said, well, I don't know that I can do that. I'm not really a story person. I wrote the memoir. I knew the stories, and he said, well, I'll help you. So we sat down and he said, what do you want to do? And I think the only horror book, I guess you could call it, or vampire book it was really, that I had read was George R.R. Martin's Fever Dream, because George Romero wanted to bring it to the big screen, and he had given it to me for, my thoughts and everything. And I love that, but I had never read a vampire novel. I'd never read Kuntz or any of them. I think I stopped reading Stephen King with Dead Zone when I realized, the good guy wasn't going to live or something. I don't remember now, but anyway, we came up with this character who is basically an actress in my industry, and it gave me an opportunity to make a comment about my industry and write about Armenians, because I'm Armenian and my lead vampire is an Armenian, and hopefully get some of my humor into it. And so then it went on from there. And I did a lot of reading about vampire novels and vampire books and vampires and everything. But it's not something that I came to naturally.
I think horror it really lets you bring your personal experiences, like you said, from your memoir into it. And what, there's so many different places horror can go. And that actually leads me to Gigi, who has a film on Hulu right now called Culture Shock. And when I first discovered Gigi many years ago, she actually had made a short film, El Gigante, based on a novel or a short story, I believe. I don't know if it's a short story or novel.
Yeah, on a novel.
Yeah. And so your work since then, a lot of it is this theme dealing with immigration. And that is only, I mean, I definitely see that from when you did that very first short until this one most recent. And just like we were saying with the memoir and personal stories that we bring, I was wondering if you could talk about why you chose horror to express this theme about immigration.
No, for sure. Well, first of all, like, I come from a super Catholic, super Mexican household. So horror was like totally frowned upon in my house. It was like everything's the devil in my family, like very superstitious family. You put your purse on the floor. Oh my God, the devil's going to take your money, like that. Like, it's hardcore. Wow. In my house. So, I always grew up just not being allowed. And there was always something about the genre that really interested me because I wasn't allowed. It's kind of like being attracted to the forbidden fruit in a way, and from moving from Mexico to Canada in my teenage years, I found it really, really hard growing up, learning English, trying to fit in. And Canada, especially where I live in Vancouver, there's not really like a one culture. It's like a city that's very rich with many cultures. So it was really hard and there's not a lot of Latinos. So that's why acting is very good for me in Vancouver. The competition is a thing.
There you go.
That's a different story. But moving to Vancouver and trying to fit in and trying to learn just how different of a world Canada is from Mexico, where I grew up. I always had trouble just finding myself. And I really started getting into the genre around my teenage years. And it wasn't until, I discovered that there were Mexican directors like Alfonso Cuarón and Iñárritu. And suddenly that led me to Del Toro. Then Robert Rodriguez. I'm like, oh my God, like, maybe it is possible. Maybe there is something I can do that really represents how I feel. And it was truly all my Mexican upbringing and folklore that I really wanted to put it in film as a way for me to express that I'm never going to forget where I'm from. I felt at that age there was a lot of, not hate, but a lot of, it felt different from friends and family that we moved, almost as if we were running away. But it's not like that. Like, everybody has a story of why they want their life to be better, or what they're striving for, what they dream for. So movies like Culture Shock, for me, it felt like a responsibility to really showcase not just a social horror that really will talk about the border crisis that is super unfortunate we're still facing. It was super important for me to also show that no matter the class you have, no matter your situation, everybody's got reasons to want a better life, whatever it is. And I really wanted to showcase with the characters of Culture Shock, everybody has a different story. Everybody's got different reasons. And I don't want to spoil the movie for anybody, but you'll really notice that at the end of Culture Shock, that message specifically. And I mean, I am very messed up in the head too. So I do love gore, as you know, Hannah. Like my shows are very, very gory.
They're very, very gory and wonderful.
Yeah. So I mean, in another way, with the short film El Gigante, based on the novel, that one just really felt like I wanted to prove that a chick can be as like fierce and as effed up as Robert Rodriguez and Rob Zombie. And I just felt at that age, I want to make a visceral short too, but touching the subject of immigration. So we have something to talk about. So I feel genre really is an amazing, amazing way to touch on very intense social subjects that we all can relate on, no matter who we are, language we speak, you name it. I think genre really, or filmmaking in general, allows us to talk about things that we maybe don't do it in person enough. Talking about in person, that's gonna be a while till that. But you get what I mean.
Absolutely. And what you said too made me think of the whole concept of why representation in the genre is so critical, because if you don't see people that look like you or have experiences like you, then you might think that you're not welcome and it's not for you. And so just like seeing other Mexican directors, people seeing you, a woman who's directing, will then inspire somebody else who might think, oh, I'm not welcome in that career or that space.
100%. I mean, I still remember the most recent reaction my dad had was with the Star Wars film Rogue One, that Diego Luna is like the main star. And I remember still to this day, like it really impacted me what my dad said. He was like, wow, that is the first time I see a star that talks like me in a Star Wars movie. Like such little details like that, like you say, inspires anybody.
Absolutely.
So, you know, as filmmakers, that's our responsibility, is to continue to challenge audiences with changes. So hopefully we continue to be on the right path for change. I think we are there, but still more work to do for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, you know, people like you are helping that move forward. So thank you. And oh, I think it maybe was an echo, but I don't know if I cut somebody off there. No, okay, it was an echo. Allison, I want to jump over to you and talk about your book. Well, Women with Guts is a book, and then you also contributed to the other, Satanic Panic, but we'll come back to that one. With Women in Guts, I was wondering if you could just tell people a little bit about the content of the book, and then I'm really curious about what your expectations or assumptions were maybe going into it, and then when you finished it, how maybe some common themes or interesting things that you noticed along the way that you didn't expect, and how that maybe impacted your next steps with the next projects you did.
Sure. Basically, Women with Guts sort of came about because Rue Morgue magazine at the time, unfortunately, they don't have this anymore, but they had a library of sort of books that were coming out under the Rue Morgue kind of publishing brand. And they had a volume called Horror Heroes. You know, I picked it up and I was very excited to page through it. And it literally was mostly just heroes. It was mostly men. You know, all the big guns, John Carpenter and Stephen King and Tobe Hooper. There were I think were 2 women covered in it. But yeah, the rest were all like male directors and producers, and a couple of special effects guys like Stan Winston. And I was looking through it and I was like, well, there's so many women in horror in front and behind the camera who have been really important to me growing up as like a little nerd. You know, so excited to see, you know, like there's so many examples, like, you know, Ripley and Alien, you know, kind of stuff like that. So I kind of gathered up a bunch of the contributors to the magazine and a few other people who were kind of actively writing in horror at that time. And this was around 2015, 2016. And I just asked everyone to pick their horror heroines, like women who, you know, either they fixated on this person as a child, or it's someone who's inspired them through their whole life. Yeah, people wrote about Elvira. Someone wrote about Mothra from the Godzilla films as a big inspiration for them. Yeah, there was a piece about Jamie Lee Curtis. And there were also pieces about, you know, people who have contributed in other ways to horror, you know, as programmers or as zine makers. There is a chapter about you, Hannah Forman, and your zine Axe Wound in it. And yeah, so it came out, and yeah, we were all really proud of it at the time, and I'm proud of it, and I'm really grateful that I got to work with so many writers that I really like on it. But it's funny, it's been out for almost 5 years now.
Oh, really? It's been that long?
It's been a while, yeah. And there's so much that has changed in horror in terms of both, you know, my personal awareness, and then also just like people, particularly women and like non-binary people who are coming up in the genre and creating and acting and writing. There's so many podcasts and like journalists now, and so many women are writing and, you know, sharing like critical theory and ideas about horror now. That it's almost like I look back at it and I'm like, oh, that was a moment in time, and like things have really changed now. You know, so yeah, I wish I could do it all over again, but you know what? There's so many books coming out now that are so inclusive of women in horror and are covering so many people, like you know, Alexandra Heller Nicholas's book about, it's like this mammoth tome. I don't have it with me, but
like 1,000 women in horror.
Women in horror.
Yeah, that's really
yes.
Yeah, and you know, like so many amazing filmmakers from all over the world, and it's like it's mind-blowing and amazing. So it's, yeah, I like the takeaway, I guess, is just I'm pleased with it because it was such a good stepping stool in my own awareness and my own education of you know, there's so many women that could have been featured in that, and so many women whose work has been overlooked for so long because they were women, like, and you know, they just did not get the attention or the financial support or the production support that, you know, men did at that time. But I think a lot of those stories are coming out now because we have more women writing, you know. So it's yeah, it's a good way forward for sure.
It is amazing, because I know when I started Women in Horror Month and the zine like 20 years ago, there was no websites, there was no social media to find women who were into horror. And if you like, you know, watched something, it's always the assumption that the men were the fans and the women were hiding behind their hands in the date, like, oh, it's so scary. And so it's amazing how much has changed since even 10 years ago in the fandom even, let alone, I don't want to say that there's a lot of new filmmakers that are being hired, because there's nowhere near enough, but there's some, so we're getting somewhere. But it's amazing, the differences. And actually that leads me, well, I don't know if you were done with your answer. I don't want to leave if you I kind of want to go with that theme though, with all three of you, to have you noticed a difference, Adrienne specifically first? I mean, you must have, I imagine, quite a fan base. I know I'm a huge fan of yours. And have you noticed a difference in the fan base from the 80s to now?
Oh, yes. I mean, I don't remember there being a fan base in the 80s, or if there was, we certainly weren't aware of it, you know. I'm trying to remember the very first Oh, I do remember the first convention I ever did, but it was just an autograph convention, and it was not a good experience. I just for several reasons, and so then I thought, I'm not ever doing this again, and I don't remember the next one, but. Well, just, I mean, in the difference in the amount of people who show up it's astronomical, you know, and I feel like, I could be wrong, but when I first started attending the conventions, my memory is of a lot of, you know, mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s guys, shaved heads, maybe tats, you know. There weren't a lot of ladies, there were women, there weren't a lot of families, they certainly weren't a lot of children. And now it's, you know, it's a family affair, as they say. And I guess, I mean, that's the first thought that comes to my mind, is just the amount. And of course, now we have social media and all of that, so everybody is more connected. But in the beginning, people didn't even know what you're doing. You're doing a horror convention? What is that? What is that? And
people want to convene about horror.
That's, yeah, what do they do? And so that has changed a lot.
Really
and
interesting.
The thing that I mean, look, we did The Fog 42 years ago yesterday. The Fog premiered. And then I went on and did all of those others in the 80s and everything. Not one of us ever anticipated that those films, because of their genre, would be just as popular and now, and it's, you know, they have withstood the test of time because of the genre. But that wasn't, nobody thought about that back in the 80s when we were doing them. Nobody. I mean, it just wasn't.
You were in just so many of them. You were right on the pulse of the great ones.
But there was no concept of it at all. And it's a joy now to have. Well, I noticed yesterday on Instagram, I think John Carpenter posted, you know, 1980, February 1st, 1980, The Fog premiered. Where were you at the time? And so I looked at the comments, and most of those people were saying, I wasn't born. My dad showed this to me 2 weeks ago. I just saw it last week. You know, there's a whole new generation, but there's a whole new group of people who are just discovering these things. They have it's really nice. It's really nice. They have a longevity. Nobody remembers China Syndrome or Coming Home. You know, they remember. You know, they remember the others.
That's so interesting. It's so. I can't imagine what it's like to make a movie like that and then not realize, like, oh, this is going to be, you know, historical. It's going to impact and inspire so many.
You didn't think in those terms. Right. I don't think anybody did.
Allison or Gigi, did you guys, actually, Gigi answered this already, so it was Allison that I hadn't asked about with horror in terms of when you were younger and your family. And look, we were talking about, I discovered, you know, I remember seeing, my dad showed me The Fog and Creepshow and all that. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, for you, horror growing up, and if it was something in your family that you were introduced to.
Honestly,
or if you discovered it later in life.
I got into it through my mom, and it's because like as a child, we would go to the video store, and, you know, I'd be very young, and I think this is pretty common experience. You go to the horror section and look at the tapes and like the cardboard. I'm saying tapes, that's dating myself. There were,
that's okay.
It was tape time, and there were like cardboard cutouts of Freddy Krueger, and you know, as a child, you'd be like, oh my God. And my mom would be like, there's no way you're touching anything in here. And then I turned like 10 or 11. And, you know, I'd be wandering around the horror section. And my mom came over one day and she's like, have you seen this movie called The Omen? And I was like, no, what's that about? And she was like, she pulled it out and she was like, we should rent this one. She's like, I used to really like this one. She loved like all the big, she loved anything satanic, actually, kind of the opposite of Gigi's family growing up, perhaps.
Yo, that's complete opposite. like that's why my face is like, he, as a how you say in English, when you get in trouble, to ground someone, like to discipline, that's the word. To discipline me and to make me shut up. My mom dropped me off when The Exorcist got remastered, hoping I'd shut up. Like that was her way of telling me,
my goodness,
good luck.
Totally different.
But I love how your family's like, look, my dear, enjoy.
Satan, I present to you, darling.
And you know, and there's so many. That's what I see at the. I'm sure the other two, Allison and Gigi, both see that at the conventions. People are bringing their 6-year-olds, their 7-year-olds, and they're joyful about showing them these movies. You know? It's a whole different.
It's so different. That's so funny, Allison. That's like, what?
She was like, she's like The Omen. She's like, The Omen has this great decapitation scene, you know, the scene. And she was like, let's watch it. And I was like literally 11 years old, like, what? And then she read The Exorcist for me, and I saw it on my own when I was like 12, maybe. And that was, I mean, what a classic rite of passage where you like end up going to bed and thinking your bed's shaking. And I really thought I was going to hell for watching.
Yeah, that movie is amazing. It still stands. Like, I think it's still good. Like, it still does its thing.
Yeah.
No, The Exorcist,
I have to tell you, all three of you, I saw that movie and I laughed.
Did you?
Oh, really? I believe in all of that stuff.
Well, of course, you grew up in a Catholic household. I did not. And
wow, you're brave.
You know,
you're brave. That movie's scary.
It scared me too. It's very funny.
Okay.
Did you see it?
Made of steel.
She is.
May I interrupt just to ask Allison, are you from Canada?
I am, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was just hearing a little accent, and I thought, oh yes.
Where in Canada?
I'm currently in Toronto.
Oh, I was gonna say, Vancouver. Never mind. Next time.
I wish Vancouver. It's very cold here right now.
It's cold here too.
Yes, no, thank you.
Speaking of Satan, Allison, can you? I was really intrigued about that chapter that you talked about with the Geraldo. I was wondering if you could just give like a little preview of what that was about. What that chapter, because was it one episode that you were writing about, or was it a theme that he did on his shows or something?
It was for this and the Satanic Panic anthology. It was put out by Kayla Janice, her publishing imprint Spectacular Optical. The Kayla Janice, like amazing programmer, writer, with Paul Korup, who was also an editor. And the whole book is just about the Satanic Panic era in the United States, where like the McMartin preschool thing, where people thought, you know, there was satanic ritual abuse in preschools, and like Ronald Reagan was like heavy metal is, you know, preaching Satan and making kids murder their families. And at the height of this, Geraldo decided, he had just done his special about Al Capone, going into Al Capone's like vault, where he like didn't find anything, but it got like the highest viewership that he had ever gotten. So the next logical step seemed to be for him to capitalize on this whole satanic panic theme that was going on. And you can watch it on YouTube. It's like maybe 2 hours long, hour and a half, and it's very funny, and it's also very like it's so conservative and like so over the top, and like he just like crams all these like terrible like stereotypes and like Oh, it's just very over the top. Yeah, he interviews Ozzy Osbourne, who like is really not given a very fair shake, in my opinion. He's like really about Satanism. He's like, I don't know. Like, but he also interviewed Anton LaVey's daughter, Zena LaVey, and I interviewed her for the chapter, and she very vividly remembers being on that show, and what a terrible experience it was for her, and she it like hung over her for the rest of her life. Like,
wow.
Yeah, her dad like used her as a figurehead to like talk about Satan on all those talk shows at a very young age, and in my view, it was pretty exploitative. But yeah, she spoke very graciously about that episode. So yeah,
Interesting.
pretty much what
I
it
have to
was
check
about.
that. Definitely need to look at the, not the episode, but your piece. I don't know if I'm looking at the time, and I don't know if I'm where we I think I was supposed to check in with Mark, so I'm just checking my chat and I don't see it. So Mark, are you there? Hi. How are we doing?
You're doing great. There aren't so many questions in the chat yet. So if anybody watching has questions, now's the time to put them in there. And Hannah, if you had another for anyone, we could maybe do that, and then I could come back, or I could just start asking the few questions that are in there, whichever.
Well, if yeah, and if there's, or well, if we want to let me know if there, in the meantime, I can just
Please,
I wanted to ask Gigi just what she, if she, sorry, I think I lost somebody, or did can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, sorry, my computer went dark for a second. Okay, start over. I was gonna ask each of you what you are currently working on right now. If you were allowed to talk about what you have going on and how people can support you. And I know that you probably have a lot of stuff going on right now in life, but whatever one you want to talk about. Who would like, does anyone want to go first, or should I just go to Adrienne and go first?
I'll go first. I have a wonderful horror film co-directed by a woman called Unearth, which is making the rounds of all the festivals, with Mark Lucas, which is a socially significant horror film about fracking.
Oh,
wow.
And
wow.
I'm very proud of that. I just finished recording, and I can't talk about it too much. I can't give the name yet because they haven't released any of the press. And how did they describe it? An episodic musical radio play, a radio program. It's basically a podcast. I think there's 10 or 12 episodes about the genre, about the sci-fi genre, the cartoon genre, the horror genre. It's a musical, scripted. It's
That's
very
awesome.
unique.
That's
And, but I think I have to wait a couple more weeks before I can talk about that. I just came back from New Zealand. It's wonderful. Wow. Filming an episode of an up and coming Netflix series. Again, can't talk about it. And on February 14th of 2022, Grease, the Broadway musical that I started in, will be celebrating its 50th anniversary. We are in the process of writing a book, garnering stories from all the original cast members in the Broadway show, in the 8 touring companies, in the 2 London productions, photographs and everything. And I am co-writing and editing that with Tom Moore, who directed the original Grease, and Ken Waisman, who produced it. And so that's keeping me going through the pandemic when I'm not doing anything else. I'm working on the book.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I think it'll be, I think there's an audience for it. There's a lot of people who love Grease.
I can't even remember could never count how many times I danced and sang when I was little in front of the television to that movie of the musical. I love it. So, Grease, amazing.
Good.
So exciting. And Gigi, do you want to go next?
Sure. Well, it's the same thing. I can't say too much, but I can give some ideas. In the acting world, I've been doing a lot of voiceover, and I was blessed with, during the pandemic, I was like, I don't know when I'm going to direct again. Let's build a voice booth. So I destroyed my parents' basement and I built a booth, completely made a hole in the wall. And I was like, maybe I'll do voiceover in the meantime. And truly, I got blessed with my first lead role in a recurring show for Netflix. So that's the one non-horror thing that my mom will be very proud of. And
she can finally watch something that you've made.
Yeah. I can't wait to announce what cartoon that is. It's a big one. So I'm excited for that. And then I booked a second lead role on another cartoon for Peacock, which I'm also, I'm just like, I'm waiting. I'm like, could you please animate faster? All the kids could enjoy. Thank you. So I'm excited for that. Like I didn't think I would book, my first big role. So that's really, really cool. And then in the genre space, I'm excited. I'm here in my hotel room in New Orleans, currently prepping and ready to shoot a new feature. So I'm so excited, and working with Blumhouse and Amazon on their slate called Welcome to the Blumhouse. It's so my film's the 8th one. So everybody's waiting on me to finish this one so they could release these films. So I'm like, wait for me, guys, wait for me. So I'm here and I'm excited. I can't talk about it too much, but what I am excited to share about this film, it's called Bingo. And I could officially say that this is the first feature with my team that we've worked for so hard for years with my Luchagore team. And partners with Shane McKenzie, co-writer with me, and Rainer Shima, who's the executive producer on the show, along with Jason Blum, Jeremy Gold, and Marcy Weisman. But for us, we've been working so hard since film school to get here. And I'm excited that, we finally have a feature in very strange times through Zoom, but, it's the new world that we got to adapt to. So I can't wait to show the world Bingo and what we pulled off, following all these COVID protocols, because filmmaking is very different now. It's a whole other ball game. I feel like I'm learning again.
Yeah.
And so it's a blessing that I'll have a movie near the end of 2021 for everyone to enjoy.
Well, we'll have to interview you later about this experience during COVID. Making
Oh,
a film. It'll be very interesting.
There's a lot to share for sure.
We will have to talk about that.
Yeah.
And Allison, I think I don't know if when I was reading your bio, if I left this out, I'm worried I did, maybe I didn't, but about your screening, did I mention that? I don't know if I did. You do an online film screening, and can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's called Toxic Femmes, and it was founded by a friend of mine named Esther Splet. And basically, we were really sad we can't go to the movies during the pandemic. So, and we're both pretty sick, twisted people sometimes. So we decided to start showing movies, and yeah, the Toxic Femmes movies that we show are basically, they depict basically bad women, nasty women, mean bullies, women in prison. There's a lot of like exploitation-y sort of content, sort of reinterpreting these films, through a queer lens and like showing them in kind of a safe space online. I don't know if I should say too much about where they're shown because I think we're violating some copyright.
Sorry, I don't want to get you in trouble.
But we have a group on Facebook. It's called Toxic Femmes Films. So if anyone's interested, you can just ask to join the group, and then we usually post where things are happening and dates and all that kind of stuff. It's just a place basically to talk crap about films online with a group of people for those of us who miss it. So
This is a good time for that. I mean,
I love
really,
that.
that's great. I'll definitely have to check that out.
yes, please.
When do you, how frequently do you do that?
We've just been on a little break, but we usually do it twice a month.
Cool. Very cool. Well, if I don't know if there's anything else that you guys are, that you wanted to mention that you're working on. I realize I don't know if I asked. Did you? No, we're good. Okay. Sorry, Mike. Oh, there. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, we have had some audience questions come in. Since Allison, there's one specifically for you that I want to get to real quick. Someone is asking, they're saying that they're dying for a copy of Music Men Ruined for Me. It appears to be out of print. Is there any chance for a reprint?
They can email me and I will print one and send it to them.
Want to tell people what it is real quick?
I also make zines sometimes, and I made a zine basically collecting stories from women and non-binary people about times when men ruined music for them, either by mansplaining or a bad relationship.
Wow.
Hilarious.
Yeah, it's
Great.
It's technically out of print, but I definitely can print them.
That's great.
To do
I just
that.
have to share when I made, a zine I made zines a long time ago, and I need to get back to it. But I remember my dad once said something, and I said, "Oh, that one's out of print." He goes, "What do you mean? You just haven't done another photocopy?" Shut up.
Press doesn't not shut down now.
Yeah, it's out of print. That's great.
Let's see. Here's a question for everybody. Coco is asking, what horror film or novel has had the greatest influence on each of you as an artist? Anybody?
Favorite questions are always the hardest.
That's
because-
hard.
Favorite questions are hard, yeah.
I feel like I went through different phases of like which one kept influencing me. Because like the first horror movie I saw was Child's Play 2. And that's because I stole. Okay, no. Mexicans, we don't steal, we borrow for a long time. That's because I borrowed when I was a kid from Blockbuster. I took it because I wasn't allowed. So I was like, oh my God, like I want to know what all these horror movies are. So I took the VHS, and I got in so much trouble. But seeing a horror movie for the first time, I really experienced that a movie can follow you home. And by what I mean that is that I never knew a movie could have such a presence right there. And I was like, holy shit, like Chucky's in my room, like Chucky's in the closet. Because I just didn't understand that fear. I didn't understand a movie could do that. So, especially, being a bad kid and taking things, borrowing things.
See what horror made you do? Your mom was right. Stealing, borrowing.
I borrowed for a long time. I returned it, I promise. But then like growing up, once I started being a woman and doing my own decisions, I started really getting into it. And I think the movie that I was like, whoa, like I didn't know it could go that far was Devil's Rejects for me. For sure. I didn't know a film could be so gritty and dirty and like, God, like it just like was not, and I was like, why do I love these bad guys? Like, why do I love these awful characters? And by awful, I mean, just because they're the villains, right? But they're so, and I've never seen anything like that at that age. And I'll start with that one because I could talk forever.
Has the word devil in the title, of course.
So I think
Can I tell a really fast story?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
My agent sent me a screenplay. I read the first 20 pages
and called them and said, there's no way. I would never do this. I will never do this. No, this is vile. I could, if my kids ever, forget it. And about a year later, I'm at a convention and Bill Moseley is there and he's signing autographs and there are people down the hall, out the door, for Bill Moseley. I said, Bill, this is fantastic. We had done Carnival together. So, what are you doing? What's going on? He said, oh, I did this movie called The Devil's Rejects. And that's the one I turned down.
Oh my goodness.
That's
Wow.
funny.
Wow.
I still have I still have his signature on my Devil's Rejects
Yes.
photo with Forsythe, with William Forsythe.
Oh,
too.
William, yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's a funny story. But you know what? It's true. Like it really, the movie is as crazy as the script.
Oh my God.
Like
That's crazy.
definitely an acquired taste.
And I'm a lot older than all you guys. So, that was like, no, thank you.
I'm guessing, Adrienne, that you didn't actually watch the movie after, right? I'm guessing.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I did work with Rob though. I did one day with Malcolm McDowell in his first Halloween. And then the night of the red carpet, he called and he said, are you going tonight? I said, no. He said, oh, good, because you're not in it. They had to cut the scene. But I did get to work with Rob. And he's a lovely guy.
Wow. Gosh, that's funny.
There's a good question here. Victoria says, you ladies are all my heroes. Question, with so many women working in horror now, what sort of themes or stories would you like to see female creatives take on?
Two ladies.
I don't know.
Allison and Gigi.
Oh, did I cut? Were you, Adrienne, were you going to say something?
No, I was just saying, let's hear from Allison and Gigi. I mean, I'm seeing what I'd like to see. And that is, the character that I did in Swamp Thing, who was one of the first, to pick up a AK-50, whatever I did, But I mean, or Ripley, as you mentioned. I think we're seeing that all the time now. Women have taken over as the heroes, and it's fantastic. So I'm seeing what I want to see.
Nice. And I know that I don't know if I was going to add something, but
Sure.
I don't know if I was just going to say that one of the things that I really am excited about is when women are creating horror, that's a whole, women know horror, right? Like we live with fear constantly just because we're women. And I think that on top of all the other stories that we have, we can bring so much to the genre moving forward because it's not represented. All the films are mostly by men, written by men. Our stories are filtered through their screenplays, and all our cultures and experiences. There's so much more that I think could be brought to it moving forward. But I definitely think, like Adrienne said, there's so much so much progress, and every year there's more. And that I just want to add that.
I think it's a really good time right now. Like I mentioned it earlier, we're in a really good time for creating stories in general, because we're recognizing, the changes that should have been made a long time ago, or at least we're recognizing the stories that we should pay attention to. So, I'd agree. I think we're seeing what we want to see now, but it's our responsibility to continue to do that. And I think, what I want to see more is just the authenticity for audiences to be challenged and learn. It was a really big win, and it wasn't easy for example, Culture Shock, my feature, to be 50% in Spanish and 50% in English. That was really hard. That was not an easy, like, yeah, let's do it. That was something that it took a lot of work, a lot of convincing, a lot of like, let's really be authentic. And it's because audiences are like, general audiences don't like subtitles. So, you know, we have to just continue to make these stories that are different. Like the more authentic we are, we are going to experience new things. So we don't keep seeing the same thing over and over. And I think right now is a great time, and we are seeing it. So we have to keep going in that direction for sure.
Good for you for advocating for that and pushing for that. Because
I
it's because
appreciate
from what
it.
you said, yeah, that it was a challenge. Good for you.
Yeah,
Thank
there are a few questions in here about folks asking about what sort of barriers did you need to overcome. So I mean that's a, I don't know if there's any. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure you guys have more. But
Barriers?
yeah, asking
I
about.
live in the face of barriers. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, there's the general questions are about overcoming barriers and advice specifically for women wanting to enter the horror arena.
Yeah. I always say you can't be afraid of failure. It's a tough business. It really is easy to get discouraged. So if you're already worried entering it that you're gonna fail, woohoo, honey, you picked the wrong job. Because like you gotta go in it with bullets ready. Like no matter what they say. Something I always face, and I still face it today, is quite a few things at my age, the way I speak, and like from where I'm from. Like funny enough, those three still come up for me. And even though I still show up ready to work, it still takes a little bit of time for me to be taken seriously. But there comes a time, you know, that if you're really sure about yourself and you really know what the story is you want to talk about, or you really know your goals and your path, nothing should stop you. Like as cliche as it sounds, is very true. Like you have to be so prepared for all these things to come at you. Because and you don't want to ever look at it as a competition, because as a woman, you carry a lot of other weight that men don't. And a lot of the times for us, and I'm sure, yeah, the ladies on this panel totally can relate, is that if sometimes we are too stern or too sure or too opinionated, now we're difficult to work with. Come on. Like, so there's always this fine balance. I feel that we are, always trying to figure out to not come across too much of this, too much of that, to be looked at a certain way. And I think it's our responsibility to really be sure of who you are and support one another, because there's still not a lot of us doing it, I think, that are out there. So I think the more we encourage it, the more we support it, the more people will continue to take it seriously. It still happens. So I just say, with all that together, I just say you just can't be afraid of failure in this job. You have to go for it. Just kill it. Yeah.
Good advice.
That puts us at our time.
Oh, I talk too much. I feel
No,
no.
I feel like I didn't let a pretty talented lady talk.
I felt like that was like a perfect note to end on, Gigi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
you guys rock. I swear, this is a Latino thing. Once we start talking, we don't stop. But
I'm Jewish, and I do the same thing, so I don't shut up.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Hannah, thank you so much for moderating.
Thank you.
I really hope that the next time we're doing events for Women in Horror Month, like we're here and in person, and that would be great. There's an audience in front of us, like imagine. But thank you. We're gonna end the live stream now. Thanks to everybody who joined us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful.
Thanks again to Sundance for inviting us, and this has been fun.